Rated T for teen.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mega Dungeoneering Guide. This is a fairly in-depth guide, mainly aimed at kind of new and returning players in regards to what are dungeons in Rift, how do they work, how can I get the most out of them, how can I succeed in dungeons, and all importantly, how can I have fun in dungeons and all that stuff. Basically, there's going to be a lot about dungeons. So to people outside of the world of MMORPGs, dungeons are a dark place where people get tortured, but inside the world of Rift, dungeons are a really fun place. You get to go into this kind of like 5-man adventure, so it's you and 4 of your buddies, or it could be 4 random people that you've never met before. You're kind of all banded together with the same cause, and that's to defeat absolutely everything you come against. So you usually fight like a slew of trash mobs, or kind of like, what do we call them, non-boss encounters. You can't call them trash because, hey, somebody worked hard to make those mobs, so you don't want to call their work trash, you know? Gotta appreciate that. And then you get to these bosses, and you fight the bosses. You can get all sorts of amazing loot and items. One of the questions that the new players might have is, how do I get involved in dungeons and at what level can I get involved? So the shortcut to bring up the looking for group tool is I, or alternatively you can go to the left hand corner, activities, and then whip up the looking for group tool via there. I just closed it then, but it's open again. So there are a couple of things in this looking for group tool I'm going to quickly explain. So there are available roles. Obviously there are 4 roles in a dungeon. So there's tank, healer, damage and support. There's usually 1 of each, apart from there are 2 damage. So 1 tank, 1 healer, 2 damage, and 1 support. And that's kind of how the dungeon finder kind of groups people together. Often the support role is rarely used as a support role. It's usually used as a 5th damage role, just due to the fact that most healing specs don't actually need that level of support in a dungeon at the moment. So you'll only find that kind of when new content comes out, and dungeons are a bit harder, and the healer, you know, might be struggling on some bosses. But if you are queuing for support, it's always nice and courteous if, like, you do tick that box and you're queuing, that you do have a support spec and can help support if the healer is having trouble. So for anybody wondering what all these different specs are, tanking is basically to protect your allies. So you charge head in first, make sure everything's hitting you, just be, you know, general kind of front leader, and you're kind of expected to be kind of setting the pace of the dungeon. So you're, you know, pulling, maybe explaining tactics. I always think of tanks as kind of the leader of the group, but you also need a tank spec to go with that. Healing is healing people up, just making sure everybody's alive. A lot of responsibility with a healer. You've always got to be on the ball, making sure that, you know, people are topped off and they're not going to die to damage, cleansing debuffs and all sorts of exciting stuff. Damage, you got to be dishing out those big numbers and just killing stuff as fast as possible. And support, you know, it's again a bit of a flexibility between helping out on damage and maybe a bit of healing if needed. So for anybody that, you know, wants to find out more about damage and healing specs, if you just basically open your soul tree by pressing N, you can go to presets, and they have got a ton of inbuilt specs in the game that you can try out. It's really, really easy. All you do is basically you reset your souls, pick a spec, hit select, and every spec has, you know, a bit of a guide and a write-up with them. Some specs are better than others. Most of the ones that are going to be like really good do have some sort of forum guide associated with them. Just, you know, that's where basically one of the pro players has written a little bit on how you play the spec and how you can get better at it and stuff, so that's always pretty cool. Once you've decided what your role is and what you want to do, the next thing to do is actually select the dungeon that you want. So for most people, most beginners, the only thing you're going to see on this interface is a random normal dungeon. So this is basically just going to put you in a completely random dungeon within your level range, unless you click Q as mentor. So basically what mentoring does is it allows you to be mentored down. So for example, my level at the moment is 65. So if I went into a level like 15 dungeon, I would just instantly kill anything. But using the mentoring tool, I can mentor down to level 15, and then, you know, the level 15 dungeon would be at my equivalent difficulty. and I'd get equivalent XP to as if I was killing level 65 mobs-ish if I, went and did that level 15 dungeon. So that's also another fun feature that Rift has. Once you kind of slightly out-level dungeons, you can just click on this Q as mentor, and that will mentor you down to the equivalent difficulty of that dungeon. So you can click on random normal, and doing a random dungeon gets you bonus XP and also money. If, however, there is a certain dungeon you really, really want to do, all you have to do is search for that dungeon by clicking, this little arrow in the bottom that says specific dungeon. And then you can go through the log of dungeons, once you surpass the level that you can queue for them. And as you can see, they've all got level ranges here, and then you just kind of, tick them. If there's a few you want to do or are looking for, you just, select them, hit join. It'll hit, say join looking for group for dungeons. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You'll have to wait a bit. Depending on what role you are, really depends on the wait. Usually if you're tank, healer, tank or healer, you'll have a very, very fast queue. If you're damage and support, the queue will be a bit longer. So usually, if you're logging on just to kind of level up and have a bit of fun, the first thing you want to do is, if you want to do a dungeon later, maybe just get in the queue as damage or support and just see when it pops up. It's always nice to kind of just get away from questing or what's going on in the open world and just kind of experience the dungeons, because they are a lot of fun. The next thing you're probably wondering are, what are the rewards associated with dungeons? Now, that really, really does vary from dungeon to dungeon. In the lead up to most of the Storm Legion content, so from 1 to 50, there are usually about 2 quests in every dungeon that will give you, that are kind of passively completed as you progress through the dungeon. So they may involve stuff like kill these bosses that are already in the dungeon, or click this shrine, which is just after some of the bosses. So those are quite interesting and also very rewarding. So the first time you do a dungeon, while you're leveling up, you're going to get that experience for the quest, the item that's going to increase the power level of your character. In most cases, those items are going to be better than the stuff you find questing. And also you're going to get the experience for completing the dungeon, the experience if you're doing a random dungeon from the random daily bonus charge, and also just loot from bosses. And one of the really, really cool things about Rift and the way that kind of items work is that once you have collected an item, so say I get some sort of awesome helm drop, at any point during the game, I can completely swap out my wardrobe using the in-game wardrobe feature just to kind of wear that item. So say I went Realm of the Fae and got this awesome boggling hat that I'm wearing at the moment, and say, for example, I want to wear that, I can wear that, and that that is purely visual. It won't change my already awesome raiding helm at the moment. It's just completely visual. So you can collect costume pieces which you can kind of swap out and mix up. I understand, that's a fairly cosmetic reward, but it's still something that's really, really cool in the game. And it's one of the things that I really, really like about Rift, is just the flexibility with the wardrobe system. But I'll definitely leave that to another video. When you reach that grand old level of level 65 and start entering the endgame, one of the things that you're going to encounter, a bit into your journey and is going to be on the path of progression once you've kind of gathered that initial gear, is expert dungeons. Now, expert dungeons are like normal dungeons, but quite a bit harder. And in return for kind of defeating the challenge that is expert dungeons, there's going to be a lot better gear in those dungeons, and also they're going to reward you with a variety of tokens. So as you can see, if you do a random Nightmare Tide expert, which are the current level 65 ones, you're going to get some expert tier marks, some raid 1 tier marks, and some raid 2 tier marks, and these can be used kind of to buy very, very powerful items. Now, the amount of marks that you get from doing one dungeon isn't like an overwhelmingly amazing amount, but they're kind of like the little added bonus. They're the icing on the cake, because as you're doing the dungeons at endgame, the expert ones, you're gonna get like loads of blue items, a lot of epic items as well dropping, so that's gonna help you, basically get geared up and ready for raiding. The next thing we're going to be talking about is general dungeon strategies. So going into a dungeon or a place completely blind, how are you going to make sure or help your group to be a success? Now, the first obvious thing that kind of needs to be said is moving out of the fire or bad stuff. So there's always a lot of bad stuff. As you can see by this gleaming example here, there is bad stuff. I'm getting hit by it, but you know, I'm moving out of it eventually. Not standing in it, not soaking it up. So there's going to be a lot of like booby traps in some dungeons, you know, as you can see in this one, Caduceus Rise, there's spikes coming out the floor, there's fire on the walls and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, moving out of bad stuff is good. 99% of times when you see a fire, it's going to do damage to you and not engulf you and make you a phoenix that does 100% more damage. So fire, you got to avoid it. The next thing we're going to talk about is interrupting. Now this is very common amongst caster mobs and healer type mobs, and basically what they're going to do is they're going to channel this kind of light blue magical bar, and if they reach the end of that, so if the bar fills up, then that's going to cast whatever spell they're casting. Most tanking specs and also DPS specs do have an ability that's off the global cooldown, which you can just press and it will interrupt whatever they're casting. Now, interrupts aren't really that important on trash mobs like you see here, but when it comes to the big bosses, it's really important that you get every interrupt that you can, because in a lot of cases that's going to mean less damage for your group, it's going to make the healer's life easier, and also, you know, sometimes it means the boss doesn't heal and stuff. So basically interrupting, again, 99 times out of 100, it's going to be a really good idea to interrupt, unless everybody in your group's going, no, don't interrupt, but that will be an extremely rare scenario. Other not as common but still quite common mechanics involve stuff like cleansing, which is basically when somebody gets some sort of purple debuff on them. You'll see it on the raid frames or in the party. This is usually the healer's job to press their cleanse button and remove it, because again, 99 times out of 100 it's probably going to be something bad. We also have purging, so a lot of the cleric specs, rogue marksman spec, warrior void knight, necromancer for the mage, and also dominator for the mage have an ability called purge, which basically removes like buffs from enemies. So if they have like some really bad buff where they're, for example, using like something like heat wave, where it increases their casting speed by 50%, so they're dealing double damage on like a boss fight or a trash mob like that, you might want to come prepared with somebody that can purge that, because that's just going to make, again, the fight or encounter a lot easier on the healer. The next thing I've put down is damaging stuff that needs to be damaged. Now this does really vary from fight to fight, and it usually takes you like a try or two to figure out what needs to be damaged. But for example, some fights the boss will go immune or take heavily reduced damage and summon some adds, or maybe an add will spawn that deals loads of damage and is very threatening. As you can see, this boss kind of like spawns a load of little adds and kind of goes almost immune to damage, so you just quickly need to nuke down a few adds to get rid of the damage reduction, and voila, the boss dies. You know, it's just varying on boss to boss, but it's a common mechanic, so just look out for additional stuff in the fight that may need to be killed quite quickly. The next mechanic is called line of sight. So some bosses possess extremely powerful attacks or abilities that if you get hit by them, you are going to die or just take so much damage. So the only way to avoid these abilities is to actually get out of the line of sight of the boss. So this basically means putting a wall between yourself and the boss. Like you can see, he's doing a big explosion. I hide behind the corner to avoid that explosion, and when that's over, just quickly come out and I know that I'm safe. So this again is a very rare mechanic, but it's always useful to be aware of your surroundings and kind of where you're battling. If there is like a really lethal mechanic, just kind of think, you know, maybe I might be able to line of sight this. Now a couple more tips for new Dungeoneers. I'd probably say one of the most like crucial things to having a successful group is get some conversation going as soon as you're in the group. So, you know, if you've queued up with 4 random people, always introduce yourself with a friendly hey, hello, what's up dog, or basically whatever is your style of greeting. You know, it kind of helps break the ice, get some conversation flowing, especially if you're new to that dungeon. You can then kind of branch on and then ask the party, basically, you know, it's your first time here, I don't know any tactics, would somebody mind telling me, like, a couple of points about the next boss, what I need to look out for? And it can be a gateway into making friends, which is always fun. Friends are fun, yeah. And finally, I'm going to finish off this video with a few top tips for expert dungeoneers. So people who really want to kind of, you know, tackle the expert content head on. The first point I have here is get awesome at your class. You can use the in-game preset builds. Like, I would probably say a good 80% of these, especially when you get to end game, are pretty decent. They're gonna work. Like the ones that have forum guides, as I mentioned earlier, are going to be the better ones, and you can also, you know, go to the forums, read what all the top players are doing, and get really, really good at the class. And when you go into a dungeon, you're being a boss, you're being a thug, you're winning on the DPS, and the group's doing, like, all this sorts of good, and you're slaying dragons and all that stuff, you're just gonna generally have a better time than if you like going there really unprepared with a build that you don't really understand. So find a spec that you enjoy, get really good at it, and you're gonna have a much, much better time. The next point I have is consumables. To make any run easier, you are going to want to use consumables. So that's stuff like power stones, oil stones, weapon stones, which will basically give you a solid increase to kind of your stats. So power stones, for example, give you more spell power if you're a caster. Weapon stones, more attack power. You can use stuff like vials to increase your kind of base stats. You can get more damage, you can get more healing, you can get more endurance. Basically, just have a look on the auction house, what's available. You can craft them for, you know, a fairly decent price, and especially if you're just stepping into expert dungeons and you want to pull that bit more weight, definitely have a look into some of the endgame consumables available, as they're going to be a big help to you. My next top tip would be to find a guild that is at that level of running and kind of progressing, but also kind of getting quite good at dungeons, so you can play with players on a similar level who are kind of learning dungeons, they want to get better, and that allows you to basically work together as a common goal. You want to get the dungeons on down, you want to get them on farm, you all want to get loot and help each other so that you can gear up for the next step, which are raids. And it's just going to be beneficial overall, because you can like make friends, you can get like your buddies geared up who are going to help you in the raids. And also, you know, it's going to make the dungeons quicker if you want to farm more loot and stuff. And just overall, you know, a bit of a smoother experience. So I definitely suggest getting yourself in a guild, because, you know, that's what MMORPGs are all about, the massive multiplayer. Yeah, that's it, buddy. And the final thing I want to talk about, of course, is maximizing your rewards. So how do you get the most out of dungeons? As you can quite clearly see, the endgame expert dungeons do reward an amount of currency. However, this currency can be increased, the amount of it you get, by a variety of various perks. So one of the added benefits, as well as being in a guild that you get the players, you also get the guild perk called Cash Finder, which gives you a 5% increase to all of the stuff that you get. If you've got stuff like a patron pass going on at the moment, you'll get a total of 55% increased currency, apart from the best in slot marks, which you can't get an increase on with the patron perks or any of the store vials. Again, if you're looking to just farm that base tier currency, so kind of like the non-best in slot stuff, you can use boost from the store. So like I would get some token tablets that would give me a whopping 160% increase to the currency, and that stacks a patron, and also the guild perk, and a couple of other things as well, just outside of this video, which are just crazy. So all of those bonuses combined, you can get literally a mega increase on the amount you're getting. We're looking at kind of like anywhere between about 230% to 260%, depending on, like, there are loads of factors like loyalty and stuff, the more kind of credits you spend in the game, because of course, you know, Rift is a free-to-play game, but they like to keep it reasonably fair and reward the players that contribute to the game with, you know, a bit more currency here and there. But then again, you know, you can't really get decent bonuses on the best in slot which makes me happy. You know, it's a very good system. It's a very fair system, I believe. I haven't seen anything else that kind of like rivals with its fairness. It's good. You can spend some money if you want to increase it. You gain in expert dungeons. If you don't want to do that, that is totally cool. There are plenty of other ways to cap your marks a week if you don't want to buy for that. Because as you can see, the amount of marks you can earn per week is capped at a certain number. So ladies and gentlemen, that is my mega guide to dungeoneering. Now, all of this information can seem extremely overwhelming at first, especially to a new player. However, the advice that I can give you is just find a spec that you love, get stuck in, and do not be afraid of failing. Because we all make noobish mistakes, we all fail sometime, but that's entirely part of the learning process. Don't let a few deaths get you down, just keep going hard at it, and do your best to have a fantastic time. I've been Seaton, thank you for watching this video. If you found it informative or in any way useful, please leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts on the video. Again, this is a very kind of experimental format at the moment, so we would love to hear your feedback on it. Do you want us to be more concise? Do you want us to explain stuff a bit more? Should we break it down into several videos? You know, it's all up to you and your feedback. We are completely listening. Let us know what you'd like to see from future videos. But yeah, apart from that, have an absolutely great day, and take care.
Commence upgrade. Powering up. Pirate. Warrior. Magician. Bowman. Thief. All classes now enhanced. Elite status reached. Adding new high-level regions. Leveling curve reduced. Unlock your potential. Test your power. Finalizing system upgrades. Commence play.
Today we're going to give a quick walkthrough of one of RollerCoaster Tycoon World's coolest features, Piece by Piece. Our Piece by Piece builder lets your imagination run wild. With this powerful tool, you can create custom buildings and scenes, connect them to the rest of your park, and then seamlessly share your creations with the rest of the RCTW community. To start making your own Piece by Piece, follow these simple steps. Open up the Piece by Piece submenu and pick one of the 4 themes: generic, adventure, western, or sci-fi. Or mix and match to create some truly original scenes. From there, you can start building out immediately, using over 230 pre-made tiles, all designed to seamlessly snap into place. Let's start by building some ancient Mesoamerican ruins. We'd recommend starting with some floor tiles to easily begin planning out the layout of your piece-by-piece creations. Now, let's build out some walls and roofs and then decorate them with an assortment of wild scenery objects. Using intuitive controls, you can place these scenery objects at any angle and elevation, giving you complete freedom to build out your structures exactly the way you want them. And you can color them too. Once you're ready to add your piece-by-piece structure into the rest of your park, you can snap in skeleton buildings, fully functional shops, restaurants, and park services that are designed to integrate into piece-by-piece creations. At any point, you can group different piece-by-piece and pre-made structures together, turning them into a whole unified structure, which can then be copied and replicated or saved as a blueprint. Any blueprints you save can be accessed from the piece-by-piece menu or shared with the rest of the RCTW community through the Steam Workshop. That's not all. You can also make your own piece-by-piece tiles and themes through our user-generated content system and your own modeling programs. Visit RollerCoasterTycoon.com for more information. And that's all there is to it.